Wait, did you know that one of the most basic forces in your life, the reason your coffee mug doesn't slide off the table, is still a complete mystery to science? Friction. We take it for granted, but it might just be the ghost in the machine, the invisible hand behind life, intelligence, even the rise and fall of civilization. Not a metaphorical god, a physical one. Welcome to Forgotten Forums Deep Dive. In a world of digital distraction and doom scrolling, it's easy to forget that we still crave something more. Complexity, mystery, meaning. Today, we're not talking about a haunted video or an internet cult. We're talking about the real world and why it might be way stranger than fiction. This is the story of how friction, yes, friction, may be the doorway to understanding everything from alien life to collective consciousness, because hidden behind everyday physics might be the one law that rules them all. Chapter 1, The Forgotten Force. Let's start with something simple. You push a book across a table. It slides, then stops. Why? Friction. Easy answer, right? But what is friction actually? Turns out no one really knows. Even Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winner, legendary physicist, and one of the clearest thinkers in science, admitted that we don't truly understand friction. He taught entire generations of physicists, explained quantum mechanics using cartoon diagrams and bongos. But when it came to friction, he basically shrugged and said, yeah, this one's still weird. You see, friction isn't a fundamental force. It's not like gravity or electromagnetism, where we can point to an equation or a field and say, there it is, there's no friction particle, no wave function. It's not built into the bones of physics. Instead, friction is something that emerges, but only under very specific conditions. Here's the really weird part. Friction only exists when you're out of equilibrium. When a system is calm, balanced, and still, friction isn't doing anything. It's like a ghost that only shows up when you poke the universe too hard. Think about that book on the table. The moment it stops sliding, friction disappears. There's no friction holding it still. It's just still. Friction only appears when you move it, when you force the system out of balance. And we don't even have the math for that. Classical thermodynamics, those tidy laws about energy and entropy, only work near equilibrium, when things are calm, when systems behave. But friction lives in the wild. It appears in chaotic, out-of-balance, non-linear situations, like a book suddenly scraping across wood, or tectonic plates grinding together for 100 years before finally snapping loose. This is what scientists call far from equilibrium thermodynamics, and spoiler alert, we have no complete theory for it. None. Not for the things that slide, scrape, collapse, spark, flare up, burn out, or burst into life. And yet, those are the things that matter. You, me, every living thing. We're friction stories. We're heat engines, constantly moving, constantly falling out of balance and clawing our way back. But the force that lets this happen, the invisible drag that shapes motion, punishes momentum, and brings systems to a halt, is still mysterious. We know how to measure it, but we don't know why it exists the way it does. Not down at the atomic level, not from first principles. Maybe that's the point. Friction is the price you pay for waking the system up, for disturbing the peace, for living. Life begins at the edge. So friction only exists when things are out of balance. That alone should give us pause, because when we look around, really look, nothing alive is in equilibrium. Your body? A furnace. Burning sugars, producing heat, releasing waste, always adjusting. Your brain? A crackling electrical storm, millions of neurons flickering in a messy, beautifully unstable dance. Civilization? A rolling storm of inputs and outputs, production and consumption, ambition and collapse. If equilibrium is death, then life is what happens at the edge. That's not just poetry, that's physics. There's a branch of science, still young, still half-formed, that deals with this. Systems that exist far from equilibrium. The study of how things behave, not when they're still, but when they're stressed, heated, agitated. And what we found is startling. When you push these systems, when you feed them energy, they don't just fall apart. Sometimes they organize themselves. This is where we meet a strange and brilliant physicist named Per Bak. In the late 1980s, Bak and his collaborators introduced a radical idea that complex systems, like sandpiles, ecosystems, or economies, can reach a kind of balance, not despite chaos, but because of it. He He called this idea self-organized criticality. Here's the setup. Imagine dropping grains of sand, one at a time, onto a pile. For a while, nothing happens, but keep going and avalanches begin. Tiny ones, medium ones, sometimes a big one. There's no rhythm to it, no pattern, but the system settles into a strange kind of order, right on the edge of chaos. A state where any tiny input, a single grain, can cause a cascade. That's criticality. And it's self-organized because no one is tuning the system. There's no conductor, no master switch. The pattern just emerges from the feedback between energy input, sand falling, and dissipation, avalanches sliding away. Bak's model, simple, almost toy-like, produced something astonishing. 1RF noise. A mathematical fingerprint found in heartbeats, brainwaves, stock markets, even classical music. It's the hum of complexity itself. And it came from a sandpile, a children's game revealing the secret rhythm of nature. It's important to understand what Bak was claiming. He wasn't just talking about sand. He was proposing a new kind of physical law, that systems with many degrees of freedom, when driven out of equilibrium, naturally evolve toward this delicate balance of order and instability. He believed this wasn't the exception. It was how nature works. In fact, that's the title of his book, How Nature Works. A bit arrogant? Maybe. But maybe he was onto something, because the idea didn't stay in the sandbox. It spread to earthquakes, to extinction events, to the behavior of neurons in your brain. All these systems exhibit the same eerie trait, power law distributions. A few large events, lots of small ones, no characteristic size, no typical frequency, just scale invariance, structure at every level, and no central controller, no puppet master, just friction, energy, and emergence. Life, it seems, doesn't resist chaos. It rides it. It dances on the edge. Chapter 3, the universal pattern. Let's zoom out, because what started with a grain of sand doesn't stop there. The pattern Bak described, small events common, large ones rare, no average size, starts showing up in the most unexpected places. Take earthquakes. For every 1 magnitude 6 quake, there are about 10 magnitude 5s, 100 magnitude 4s, 1,000 magnitude 3s. That's not a coincidence. It's a power law known as the Gutenberg-Richter relationship. Earth doesn't release stress on a schedule. It builds, it buckles, it breaks, in avalanches. Now look at your brain. Neurons don't fire in some neat, regulated rhythm. Instead, they flicker in unpredictable bursts, some big, some small, and they also follow power laws. This has a name too, neural avalanches, just like the sandpile, just like the fault line. The deeper you dig, the more you see it. Financial markets, booms and busts, forest fires, small burns, rare megafires. Even the internet, with its viral spikes and silent voids, behaves like this. No central planner made it so. These patterns emerge when many agents interact. Feedback loops form, and energy flows in faster than it can drain out. That's the heart of it, the balance between input and friction. Feed the system energy, new money, new stress, new sand, and the system responds. Not with linear growth, not with clean efficiency, but with cascades. Sometimes it whimpers, sometimes it roars, but it's the same basic pattern, over and over again, across time, scale, and species. Why? That's the question no one has answered. Because even though we see these patterns everywhere, we don't know why they emerge. They just do, in the sandpile, in the brain, in a society tipping toward revolution. This is what makes it feel almost spiritual, even though it's rooted in cold, indifferent physics. There's a logic humming underneath the chaos, an invisible hand, not the divine kind, but a real one, made of feedback, delay, resistance, and flow. And if these dynamics shape the world, if they shape us, then maybe we're not just living in patterns. Maybe we are patterns. Temporary whirlpools in the river of energy, organisms made of order, built by systems trying not to collapse. And if that's true, then maybe the closest thing to a god we've ever touched is the ghost of a sandpile. Chapter 4, the mystery of organization. So we have the pattern. Earthquakes, neurons, markets, memes, they all crackle with the same pulse. Energy in, friction out, cascading feedback. And somehow order emerges from it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We don't know how. We can see the results. We can measure the power laws, watch the patterns dance. But the deeper question, the why, remains untouched. How does a system with no leader, no master control, no centralized plan give rise to structure, complexity, function? How do you get a brain from firing neurons, a civilization from scattered tribes, a storm from rising heat? This is what makes friction so strange, because it doesn't just oppose movement, it shapes it. It's not a wall, it's a sculptor. Without it, energy just disperses. With it, energy transforms. But here's the rub. We have no laws for how this transformation happens. Physics, as it stands, is astonishingly good at explaining closed systems, stable ones. It gives us the laws of thermodynamics, Newton's motions, Maxwell's fields, but all of those work near equilibrium, when the system is tidy, quiet, well-behaved. Go beyond that edge, into turbulence, emergence, chaos, and the laws vanish. There is no unified theory for far from equilibrium systems. No equation that tells you how neurons decide to think, how life first sparked, how complexity builds upon itself. It's one of the greatest absences in modern science, and almost no one talks about it. This is where the comparison gets sharp. Because when we did look for a so-called God particle, we found one. The Higgs boson. A particle that gives other particles mass. A sort of invisible molasses draped across the universe. If a particle interacts with the Higgs field, it gains mass. If it doesn't, it remains massless. It's beautiful. It's elegant. It helps close a critical gap in the standard model of particle physics. But here's the thing. The Higgs gives mass, not meaning. It explains what particles weigh, not why they matter. The Higgs boson might tell us why an electron has mass, but it doesn't tell us why a brain can think, why societies form, why chaos self-organizes. That question, how structure arises out of unstructured systems, remains untouched. And it may be the most important question of all. Because it's not just physics. It's everything. You, me, all of life, every thought, every city, every system that persists in time, all of it relies on emergence. On this invisible tug-of-war between energy and friction, between input and organization. And the shocking truth is, we don't know the rules. There is no theory, no oracle, no roadmap. Just the pattern, the sandpile, the whispers in the noise. If the Higgs boson is the ghost that gives you weight, then friction is the ghost that gives you shape. And maybe, just maybe, that's where we should be looking. Not for a creator on the outside, but for the silent principle embedded inside. Not mass, not miracles, organization. From within. Chapter 5, Speculation and Soul. So what does it all mean? We've followed a trail from sliding books to sandpiles, from earthquakes to neurons, from friction to form. And what we find again and again is the same quiet miracle, organization emerging out of disorder. No master plan, no blueprint, just energy, freedom, and friction. This is more than just a scientific oddity. It might be the engine of everything that matters. Because if life can emerge from this balance, if structure and intelligence are byproducts of systems pushed far from equilibrium, then life isn't rare. It's inevitable. Alien life? Not a miracle, not an accident, but a natural consequence of thermodynamics. If and only if there's friction. If there's imbalance, feedback, resistance, then life isn't a fluke. It's the universe trying to organize itself. And what about consciousness, that strange inward flicker we all experience? The ghost in the machine. Is it just a side effect of complexity? Is your sense of self just what happens when enough neurons interact avalanche style over and over until something wakes up? That might sound eerie, but we're already seeing something like it, right now. Because there's another place where emergence is playing out. Artificial intelligence. Neural networks. Those digital minds we've trained to write, paint, chat, even dream, are not programmed in the traditional sense. No one tells them how to do what they do. They learn by being pushed out of balance, given goals, fed data, penalized for error. They learn by friction, by gradients, by loss. That's literally what it's called, loss functions. A measure of how wrong the system is. And every time it's wrong, it adjusts. Slowly, blindly, beautifully, it organizes. And when it works, what emerges is nothing like what we expected. A mind made of math. A voice made of static. A mirror, maybe, held up to our own emergent nature. We are not gods creating AI. We are patterns, building patterns. So what does that make us? Maybe not machines, maybe not miracles, but processes. Vast, shimmering arrangements of atoms, energy, and friction. Self-organized, critical, alive. We are the sandpile. We are the avalanche. And what about God? Stephen Hawking, in his final book, argued that there's no need for a creator because time itself didn't exist before the Big Bang. The Higgs boson was once called the God particle, but all it does is assign mass. It doesn't assign meaning. If there is something divine in the universe, It's not a being, it's a principle, not watching from outside, but guiding from within. A set of rules we don't understand, a hand we can't see, but whose work is everywhere. Friction may be its signature. A mundane force, so familiar we forget how strange it is, yet capable of shaping everything from galaxies to thought. Maybe God isn't a person, maybe God is a process. And if that's true, then finding the divine might not require looking up. It might just mean paying closer attention to how things fall, to how they settle, to how they rise again, reshaped. Thanks for watching Forgotten Forums. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a comment, share it with a curious friend, and hit subscribe. We've got more strange truths on the way. And hey, got a theory about the invisible hand? A thought about emergence or AI, or how sandpiles might just be souls in disguise? Drop it below, we'd love to hear it. Until next time, stay curious, stay unstable, and remember, equilibrium is overrated.